Jinnah of Pakistan by Stanley Wolpert. Chapter 17 Quetta and Peshawar, 1945 to 1946. The aftermath of the Simla Conference debacle was a governors' meeting in New Delhi to help Wavell and Whitehall decide their next political move. Winter elections, most agreed, were now required, but the Punjab's Governor Glancy argued vigorously against any elections till an economic planning conference could be called to expose the potential pitfalls of Pakistan. Unless the Muslim League could be steered away from the crude version of Pakistan, he insisted, there would be civil war in the Punjab, and immediate central elections might consolidate the Muslim League position. Glancy feared that Punjab Muslims would vote on what might appear to them simply as religious issue, and his concerns reflected Khizr's deepest apprehensions as well. Bengal's governor conceded that none of his leading Muslims could explain what Pakistan meant. In the last resort, they always fell back on Jinnah. For example, they said that Jinnah was satisfied that Pakistan was economically sound. Therefore, it must be so. Casey thought time an important factor since he doubted that Jinnah had any real successors and argued that the Pakistan idea might go to pieces without him. There are only two major parties in this country, Jinnah insisted, restating Nehru's famous 1937 formula in his first public pronouncement in Bombay following the Simla Conference. Invitations issued to Mr. Gandhi and myself were on the basis that Mr. Gandhi was the recognized leader of one of the parties and myself the lender of the other. The British called them parties, but in fact they are two major nations. No other formula would satisfy him. A quarter of a century after his public humiliation at Nagpur, he had risen from the dust of ignominy to stand erect at death's door, proclaiming to the world that Mr. Gandhi was no better than Mr. Jinnah, merely his opposite number in a different major nation. Jinnah seemed quite obsessed with Gandhi and his behavior, minutely examining and questioning all facets of his activity. When it suits him, he represents nobody. He can talk in individual capacity. He is not even a 4 Anna member of the Congress. He undertakes fast to decide the political issue. He reduces himself to zero and consults his inner voice. Yet, when it suits him, he is the supreme dictator of the Congress. He thinks he represents the whole of India. Mr. Gandhi is an enigma. How can we come to a settlement with him? There was so much venom and bitterness against the Muslims and the Muslim League that the Congress were prepared to go to any length with two objectives. First, to hammer down, humiliate and discourage the Muslim League, and every method was adopted to bully us, coerce us, and to threaten us to surrender. The second was to see Muslim League ignored and bypassed, and for that purpose they stooped to the lowest point, that they threw up their principles into the winds. Many of the ambivalent fears preoccupying Jinnah's mind then were triggered, as usual, by thoughts of Gandhi, with whom he associated venom and bitterness, and what to Jinnah were the two most heinous objectives: to hammer down, humiliate, discourage, and bully, or to ignore and pass by him. Whether it was through humiliating action or silent contempt, nothing could be more shattering to his self-image or more painful to his sensitivity of heart and mind. He considered it far better to die fighting at the head of his own smaller party nation than to live in the shadow of insulting an enigma. To fill the League's election war chest, Jinnah spoke again in August in his home city, accusing Congress of trying by hook or by crook to lure Muslims into an all-India union and warning that they look to the British bayonets to perform the task for them, and hence they resort to alternating and varying methods, flattering and hurling abuses, cringing and giving threats to the British government. But we cannot agree to any arrangement which means freedom for Hindus and the establishment of Hindu Raj and the slavery for Muslims. His listeners donated over 300,000 rupees that day, funds which Jinnah called the League's silver bullets. The Labour Party is, of course, both by its convictions and by its public utterances, committed to do its utmost to bring about a settlement of the India problem, wrote Pethick Lawrence to Wavell in his first weekly letter. I feel sure that my colleagues will welcome your proposal to hold elections, which I am supporting to them in a paper which should be considered within the next few days. The new Secretary of State was greatly attracted to Indian thought and culture. He had visited India with his suffragette wife in 1926 to 1927, served as a member of the Round Table Conference in 1931, and was the most emphatic master of the India Office to Indian national aspirations since Montagu or Morley. Glancy did his best to derail early elections, fearing Pakistan, yet finding that throughout the Muslim districts of the Punjab, since the Simla conference, Jinnah's stock has been standing very high. He had been hailed as the champion of Islam. I must confess that I am gravely perturbed about the situation, because there is a serious danger of the elections being fought, so far as Muslims are concerned, on an entirely false issue. The uninformed Muslim will be told that the question he is called on to answer at the polls is, are you a true believer or an infidel and a traitor? If Pakistan becomes an imminent reality, we shall be heading straight for bloodshed on a wide scale. Non-Muslims, especially Sikhs, are not bluffing. They will not submit peacefully to a government that is labelled Mohammedan Raj. No Englishman so clearly foresaw the dreadful implications of the partition of Punjab, yet Glancy's voice from the hinterland elicited no echo in the rarefied corridors of Whitehall. On August 20th, 1945, Wavell was invited home for consultation with the new cabinet and authorized to announce that elections would be held throughout British India during the next cold weather. Before leaving India, the Viceroy sent Pethick Lawrence his summary analysis of the Pakistan problem, first explaining that what Glancy had written about the Punjab and partition would similarly apply to Bengal, but the Punjabis are tougher than the Bengalis, and the Sikhs, who were the rulers in the Punjab before we annexed it, would fight rather than see their holy land pass under the permanent Muslim rule. He then noted the seeming paradox that support for the Pakistan idea was much stronger among Muslims in the Muslim minority province than in the Pakistan provinces. Wavell remarked that he had always hoped to be able to avoid any full-scale public inquiry into the feasibility and implications of Pakistan, since he anticipated that Jinnah would boycott such a conference or commission and it might only stir up communal feelings. He felt, however, that continuing to ignore the possibility of its birth would not make Pakistan fade away. Wavell reached London before the end of August and found Pethick Lawrence, who looks old, is pleasant and amiable, waiting to welcome him home and motor with him to Claridge's. They conferred in Whitehall the next day for an hour and a half. 2 days later, Wavell met with the India Committee of the Cabinet, chaired by Attlee. Sir Stafford Cripps, now President of the Board of Trade, was the committee's most formidable member. The Viceroy reported that he thought it most unlikely that Jinnah would enter into discussions without a guarantee of acceptance of Pakistan, at least in principle. Wavell's own judgment that Jinnah spoke for 99% of the Muslim population of India in their apprehension of Hindu domination. The real strength of Mr. Jinnah's position was the widespread and genuine fear among Indian Muslims of Hindi domination and Hindu Raj. There had been a very great hardening in the positions of the Indian parties since 1942, the Viceroy argued, and he saw no readiness on the part of any party in India at present to accept the Cripps offer. As for the Constituent Assembly, Muslims would boycott it unless the Pakistan issue was conceded. Yet, to concede that issue might lead to a boycott by the Hindus. Except for Attlee, who had less and less time for India as Prime Minister, Cripps and Pethick Lawrence were the only cabinet members to concern themselves deeply with the Indian affairs at this time, and Cripps considered his friends Birla and Nehru right in downgrading Jinnah's power or potential. Nor did he take Wavell very seriously. Wavell, on the other hand, fearing from the reports of Patel's and Nehru's speeches that Congress was preparing another revolutionary confrontation with the government, inclined more favorably towards Jinnah and the Muslim League, who might prove to be his only allies in the coming struggle for power. So, despite Labour's greater sympathy for India and its strongly stated interest in helping India resolve its complex political problems, this cabinet, like its predecessor, simply stood behind the Cripps offer of 1942 and ignored the monumental historic changes wrought by 3 intervening years, self-righteously professing that if the Indian parties or any of them were not prepared to cooperate, the responsibility would be theirs. Wavell and Pethick Lawrence went back to their drawing boards to seek a better way of informing India that Great Britain's new post-war policy was the same old Cripps position. The Viceroy met with Churchill on the eve of the ex-Prime Minister's departure for Lake Como and was shocked to learn that the only reason Churchill had agreed to my political move, the first Simla conference, was that the India Committee had all told him it was bound to fail. Jinnah had taken his pre-election fundraising tour to Karachi en route to Quetta, where the dry, cool air was thought to be best for his lungs. His message was simple and the same wherever he spoke. The Muslim League was the only authoritative and representative party of the Muslims throughout India, and the sole platform of the League was Pakistan. Jinnah began to act like the head of a separate nation. Moreover, he wired Attlee at this time to protest any softening of British bans on Jewish refugees being admitted into Palestine, warning the Prime Minister, "It is my duty to inform you that any surrender to appease Jewry at the sacrifice of Arabs would be deeply resented and vehemently resisted by Muslim world and Muslim India, and its consequences will be most disastrous." With Jinnah obliged to remain in Balochistan, too weak to travel during the 1945 campaign, Liaquat Ali and other working committee members of the Central Parliamentary Board and Committee of Action actually ran the Muslim League from its New Delhi headquarters and ticketed candidates. Much provincial controversy, bickering and backbiting ensued, especially in Bengal, Sindh and the northwest frontier. In mid-September, Sir Feroz Khan Noon had resigned his defence seat on the Viceroy's Executive Council to return home to the Punjab to campaign there as a League candidate. But a month later, Wavell reported to Pethick Lawrence that Sir Feroz has not been universally welcomed, and I doubt if the party there in the Punjab is as united and cordial as it might be. The Muslim League have always suffered from lack of organization as compared to the Congress, and if they waste their time in personal quarrels, they may suffer at the polls. Pakistan is a question of life and death for us, Jinnah told a public meeting in Ahmedabad that final week in October, stopping on his way home to Bombay to pick up a check for 200,000 rupees collected from Gujarati Muslims. I had asked for silver bullets to fight the election campaign, and Ahmedabad had responded next to Bombay, which was a richer city. All Muslims believed in one God and were one nation. They wanted Pakistan and would attain it. It was their amulet, their charm, which would increase their strength and glory. The moon of Pakistan is shining, and we shall reach it, he assured the cheering crowd. On 1st November, Jinnah predicted a Muslim League sweep at the polls, informing a reporter from the Associated Press that he could not agree with the critics of his Pakistan plan, who contend it is unworkable. Our next step will be a demand upon Britain to recognize. Congress continued to demand immediate independence for India as a whole under a government selected by the Congress High Command. Wavell alerted his officials and prepared to declare martial law. Politician Pethick Lawrence, however, read none of Wavell's anxious reports of Congress campaign rhetoric with great alarm, yet cabled the Viceroy to ask, but can Jinnah be induced to accept a modified form of it, Pakistan, which it might be possible to concede? Cripps now advised the Cabinet Committee to send a parliamentary delegation to India and urged the Viceroy to meet with Gandhi, reporting he understood that Gandhi was ready and willing to influence Indian opinions towards moderation. If, as anticipated after elections, Congress would be the majority party, it would no longer be possible to treat them irresponsibly. Hence, Labour's Pethick Lawrence and Cripps resolved to keep the Viceroy in rein on the rugged political road toward India's independent rule, rather than allowing him to bolt off on any smoother martial freeway. Wavell, however, was losing all patience with India's growing political complexity and penchant for debate. His silences became more ominously eloquent. Boredom and depression settled deep inside the aging marshal's soul, as he had earlier noted in a journal entry of mid-November 1945. Back this evening from UP. It was the dullest tour I have ever done. Tiring, depressing, and hot. To Whitehall, Wavell wired an immediate top-secret reply. I do not think it advisable that I should invite Gandhi to see me. Much of Wavell's depression and that of his commander-in-chief, General Auchinleck, as well as most of the senior British martial and civil officers in India at this time, was immediately associated with the passionate hue and cry raised against British rule that November, as soon as the first leaders of Subhas Bose's Indian National Army were brought to trial for treason in New Delhi's Red Fort. Bose had died in a plane crash on Formosa, and 3 of his leading lieutenants, one Hindu, one Muslim and one Sikh, all of whom had been serving in the British Army in Singapore when it surrendered, emerged now as national heroes. Nehru, Bhulabhai Desai and Taj Bahadur Sapru volunteered to defend Bose's officers, who were brought home in irons only to be hailed as patriots throughout the land. In Bose's home city, Calcutta, riots of protest raged, leaving over 30 dead, hundreds injured, and countless rupees in property burned and ravaged. Soon after the trial got underway, most British officials realized that they had made a terrible mistake in giving the Indian National Army so much publicity and so prominent a platform. General Sir Claude Auchinleck, in a top secret letter to Wavell on November 24, 1945, wrote, "The evidence reaching us now increasingly goes to show that the general opinion in the army, as opposed to that of certain units and individuals who have particular reasons for bitterness, is in favor of leniency. If you agree, in the case of the present trials, the sentences would be commuted if it was clear from the evidence when the trials are concluded that the accused were carrying out what they believed to be their duty." To Wavell, more than any message he received from Whitehall, this letter from the Auk convinced him that the days of the Raj were numbered. The World War may have been won, but India was lost. Jinnah personally played no part in the great trial of the Indian National Army, though the League associated itself with the defense since, as British intelligence opinioned, the trial of Muslims may make their effect increasingly felt on the Muslim public and League alike. For the first time since 1936, Jinnah journeyed to the frontier to campaign for a week. He addressed a Muslim League conference in Peshawar on November 24th, 1945. We have no friends, neither the British nor the Hindus are our friends. We are clear in our own minds that we have to fight against both of them. If both are combined against us, we shall not be afraid of them. We shall fight their united might and inshallah win in the end. When Jinnah asked the crowd if they wanted Pakistan or not, their answer came in deafening shouts of Allahu Akbar. God is great. To win Pakistan, he assured them all they had to do was to vote for the League candidates. Then he became defensive, sarcastic, irate. They, Hindus, ask, what are the sacrifices of Mr. Jinnah and the Muslim League? It is true that I have not been to jail. Never mind, I am a bad person. But I ask you, who made sacrifices in 1920 to 1921? Mr. Gandhi ascends the throne of leadership on our skulls. This last statement came closest to revealing Jinnah's deepest grievances, reverting to the worst trauma of his political life, when he actually appeared to have felt Mr. Gandhi step on his skull to ascend to the throne of Congress national leadership. In Calcutta, Casey was beside himself with frustration and fear in the face of the pro-Indian National Army riots that left 33 dead, hundreds wounded, and all but wrecked the city. Bengal's governor met with Gandhi in Calcutta early in December and reported to Wavell that his political reasoning lacked realism and balance. However, there was no signs of senility. At their second talk, Casey told Gandhi that what was the standing in the way of self-government for India was not the British but the Muslim League, which was suffering from Hinduphobia. Casey urged the Congress to make a public announcement of a substantial list of safeguards it would be willing to insert in a new constitution for Muslims to blunt the edge of Muslim League fears and suspicions. Gandhi responded that he had conceded safeguard after safeguard to Jinnah, who constantly raised his price until he reached what in essence was Pakistan, and Gandhi did not believe anything less would satisfy him. Gandhi also told Casey that he believed Jinnah to be a very ambitious man and that he had visions of linking up the Muslims of India with the Muslims of Middle East and elsewhere, and that he did not believe that he could be ridden of his dreams. The League won all 30 Central Assembly seats, one of them Jinnah's, that December, a stunning victory that validated Jinnah's prediction and appeared to prove the universal appeal of Pakistan among the Muslims of India. Congress, though it retained a majority of 55, actually lost 4 seats. The first round was over. The day is not far off. Jinnah promised his jubilant followers, when Pakistan shall be at your feet. He directed more criticism and sarcasm at Nehru, mocking him as the impetuous Pandit who never unlearns or learns anything and never grows old. Nothing but Peter Pan. Pethick Lawrence wrote to Jinnah and Azad to inform them of the parliamentary delegation forthcoming visit and asked if they would meet the British to discuss matters with them. Jinnah met with the 10-member deputation led by Labour's Professor R. Richards in New Delhi on January 10, 1946. 5 days earlier, Jinnah had talked with Wavell for an hour. But Jinnah's refusal to allow Liaquat to meet with Wavell shows how little he trusted any of his lieutenants to participate in tough negotiations with the government. He alone felt confident in giving nothing away as he wrestled to win Pakistan. As the provincial election campaigns heated up, reports of Hindu-Muslim riots and and of poisonous propaganda, especially in the Punjab, increased. Moreover, Pethick Lawrence had concluded that by then that it would be useless to leave another round of political negotiations to the viceroy alone, and nothing less than a cabinet mission to India was required to break the Hindu-Muslim deadlock. Three ministers with full authority to decide points at issue, led by the Secretary of State, would have to fly out shortly before provincial elections were concluded, sometime in March. The cabinet recognized that this mission might, in fact, be its final card in the game of British India, spinning so swiftly to its tragic finale. If negotiations broke down, civil disobedience would follow, and things would not long remain non-violent. The army might even decide not to obey orders. Commutation of Indian National Army trial sentences had accelerated the metamorphosis of mutineers into national heroes. The total number of Europeans in all official services was rapidly dwindling as many more old hands exercised their option of retiring on their pensions back home. Precious little time left. Cabinet decided in February to send Cripps and First Lord of the Admiralty, A.V. Alexander, to India to be, together with Pethick Lawrence, their three wise men. Wavell was afraid Cripps would be the operative element among those and considered Cripps sold to the Congress point of view and not quite straight in his methods. A month before the cabinet mission left for India, the parliamentary delegation led by Richards returned to 10 Downing Street to report what it had found. Most members agreed that some form of Pakistan would have to be conceded, and the sooner the better. Mrs. Muriel Nicol, who admitted that she began her visit to India impressed by the strong necessity of maintaining the unity of India, found the Punjab explosive. The Muslim population there was all worked up in favor of Pakistan. She concluded, and therefore it must be conceded. She believed Jinnah would modify his demand, but only if the principle were granted at an early stage. Brigadier Austin Lowe felt it would be undesirable that HMG should make a declaration in favor of Pakistan. He agreed that it might be necessary but feared Pakistan is not a viable proposition. MP Reginald Sorensen regarded Pakistan as wholly irrational. He was not sure that Mr. Jinnah could be regarded as a rational person, but in his view, necessary. Mr. Arthur Bottomley did not like Pakistan, but thought it would be necessary to avoid widespread bloodshed and to preserve our own trade interests. For whereas the strong tendency in the Congress majority provinces was to boycott trade with the United Kingdom, the Muslims were eager to do business with us. Pethick Lawrence's brilliant private secretary, Francis Turnbull, then prepared a note on the viability of Pakistan, which helped brief the cabinet mission prior to the start of negotiations. There is bound to be an economic price to pay for the satisfaction of the Muslim demand for the political independence. That weighty document, drafted primarily by Mr. Turnbull, warned. The division of India will be born in bitter antagonism, and it will certainly be rash to assume that this will not be reflected in the efforts necessary to regulate the machinery of communications and of economic intercourse between the Pakistan states and the rest of India. It is hard to resist the conclusion that, taking all these considerations into account, the splitting of India will be the reverse of beneficial so far as the livelihood of the people is concerned. To compound India's problems, drought brought famine to most of the southern provinces of the subcontinent, and grain shortages were starting to spread from Bengal to the frontier. Wavell appealed to Gandhi and Jinnah to nominate deputies to accompany an official food delegation to London and to the United States. Jinnah responded positively. Wavell reported that Gandhi advised him to send for Azad and talk to him. with food grains rationed to 12 ounces per day. Mass protest marches began in many Indian cities, starting with Allahabad. Visible deterioration of health was widespread. The average Indian's rationed diet provided no more than 1200 calories, fewer than half the minimal requirement for normal daily activity.